Last night, something occurred. Something you are now unaware of. Something that contradicts what you believe to be true. Additionally, the person you love was a part of it. You were supposed to hear this now, even though they didn't intend for you to find out. To open your eyes, not to harm you. And what you're going to discover will show you what's actually been happening in their hearts. However, not all at once. The deepest layer of the truth is still to be discovered. Have you not sensed a change? A silence, a distance, and an excessively lengthy glance. Or perhaps everything appears to be all right. The most perplexing aspect of it all is that something is going on beneath the surface, just out of grasp and out of sight. You wouldn't believe it at first if you knew what was stated about you. You were the only subject of a private discussion between two people. This is why it's so disturbing. You didn't know. You weren't present. However, the words that were said at that very moment were strong and continue to reverberate. One of them hesitated before speaking. The other with assurance. However, both disclosed something they would never publicly acknowledge. And you must hear everything, not to be hurt, but to at last comprehend the things that are left unsaid, the odd energy, the inexplicable coldness, and the unexpected remoteness. Everything relates to that discussion. That's not all, though. There was another incident. There is still another hidden reality. And all you know about yourself is altered by this one. You believe you understand their emotions. You believe you have everything figured out, but you're not. Not quite yet. Words are still hanging between them. Words that have not yet reached you. However, they will shortly. One fragment at a time. Additionally, the first component will put your heart to the test. Your thinking will be tested by the second item. You're not yet prepared for the third. Nobody is. However, you will be. Because you are receiving this message just when you need it most. Let's return to that room, to that moment, to that private chat before you make a decision, move, or reveal any more of your heart without knowing the whole truth. Imagine it. One person is listening intently, eyes fixated, and nodding slowly while the other is speaking gently and cautiously. The words that pierced everything came next. Your name was called, but not in the manner you would have preferred. It was said with weight, bewilderment, and an incomprehensible need. One of them claimed that you had changed and that they no longer understood you, making the person they had known seem alien. The other individual agreed, albeit not entirely. They hesitated. They barely stood up for you. Then they revealed something hazardous that was never supposed to leave the room. A secret that would undermine all of your trust. It wasn't intended to be cruel, but it also wasn't intended to be kind. It was simply truthful. Honest in a manner people rarely are while you're standing in front of them. But you weren't there. They felt secure as a result. They were liberated. And that freedom allowed the truth to emerge. Here's what you should know, though. The talk did not end. They came to a halt. They were cut off. The most crucial aspect is actually what was left unsaid. That piece is still lacking. Hovering like an impending storm, they are still waiting in the shadows. And you may be the one who completes it in the end. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe that's why you're hearing this message right now. To finish what they were unable to do and recover the narrative they nearly shared without you. However, you must remain with me. Keep your thoughts focused. Keep your heart open. It gets deeper in the following section. This is the point at which your own life begins to bear the scars of this debate. Have you observed the periods of silence? Have you noticed a change in tone when you ask specific questions? Have you pondered why people look aside just for a moment? It's all connected. Every small instant of distance, every delayed reaction, every unexpected shift in mood, it's all part of the same thread. And the thread leads back to that intimate time. But here's the unexpected part. What they said about you. It wasn't totally bad. Indeed, there was annoyance. Confusion did exist, but there was also love. Love is deep, complex, and flawed. They had no idea how to contain it all. They discussed it behind your back, then. To make sense of you and comprehend the one person who matters most, not to betray you. And that's what you should cling to. There is still love. However, it is concealed by fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of causing you harm. Fear of acknowledging that they might be mistaken. They didn't completely mean what they stated. They also refrained from saying things they really wanted to. However, a single sentence completely altered the situation. Furthermore, it wasn't specifically about you. It has to do with them. The secret admission they made was, I don't know if I'm enough for them. Not that you are insufficient, but that they might not be. They muttered that. The other person heard that, and they didn't want you to know since it would expose their deepest hurt, uncertainty, and insecurity. And yet, here it is. You now know a little bit more, but not much because the greatest truth is still to come. There is still another layer that is sealed. Beneath the surface is another confession. And you don't realize how near you are to it. You'll see after one more piece. Not the complete image. Not quite yet. But enough to comprehend the restlessness in your heart. Enough to understand why you were drawn to this particular time. What they said about you. Your narrative didn't end there. It was just the start. You now have the power to determine what occurs next. However, not just yet. You must first learn the whole of the truth. And that reality is still being revealed right now, perhaps in a silent text, behind closed doors, or during a protracted silence in a typical conversation. It will happen soon. Are you prepared to hear it? Remain near. The next section will soon be available. You'll be surprised by what you discover. Not in disbelief, but with understanding. Because you already know in your heart. You've known all along. You simply lacked the necessary language. You will now. Simply remain. One more second. Next is the most crucial section. You'll see after this, so you don't want to miss it. At last, you will see. However, welcome back to the last piece. It means something that you stayed. It indicates that your heart is prepared for the subsequent layer. We didn't finish the conversation there. After they discussed their own uncertainty, something occurred. There was a change in the room. The atmosphere shifted. The listener leaned closer. Next, they posed a straightforward question that turned out to be the riskiest of them all. "Do you still love them?" they said, and the response took some time. There was a lengthy, heavy pause. And because sometimes silence speaks louder than a confession, everything was exposed in that quiet. The other person observed them struggling and trying to find the appropriate words, but they were unsuccessful. Rather, something else appeared. A sigh and a glance at the window. A soft, barely discernible murmur. "I'm not sure anymore." And something was broken by that whisper. They knew it wasn't true, therefore it was said inside the speaker rather than between them. They were aware. They were simply unable to express it aloud. Not quite yet. But that reluctance. It revealed everything to the other individual. It conveyed to them that love still exists. However, it's buried. Buried beneath arrogance. Buried behind old wounds. Smothered under the dread of showing further concern. And since you had that doubt, isn't that the part that hurts the most? You've sensed their retreat. You've felt the hesitancy in their touch. You've thought, is it me? Am I the reason they're confused, after hearing the doubt in their voice as they bid you good night? Yet this is the reality you must cling to at this moment. You're not the one. You were never the one. You are not to blame for their reluctance. They are engaged in an internal conflict of their own. They are battling something they haven't even acknowledged to themselves, something you can't see. Additionally, they used that private discussion as a means of attempting to understand their own hearts and get clarity. However, they discovered more confusion rather than clarity. They didn't offer guidance because of the individual they spoke to. All they did was listen. And because they had to hear their own statements aloud, that hearing made things worse. And what they heard did not sit well with them. They sounded disoriented. They sounded feeble. They sounded as though they were unaware of their own emotions. However, that is not their identity. They have simply evolved into that person right now. Additionally, that version of them is transient. However, they are unable to retract the words that have already been said. Now that those words have been released into the world, they are spreading and getting closer to you, not as an assault, but as a revelation. A realization that will soon impact your life. When it does, you will at last comprehend why everything has seemed so strange. Why the silence has grown so loud, why the laughter sounds forced, and why the warmth has diminished. Everything relates to that particular moment. This is where it becomes even more complex, though. Because the individual they conversed with had a secret of their own. They weren't merely being considerate. They were paying attention since they too have emotions. Emotions they had long concealed. Emotions they had no intention of sharing. However, that exchange created an opportunity. An unintended door that opened. Furthermore, the third person is no longer impartial. They have a part in it. They're also waiting. Awaiting the next development. Waiting to watch if the relationship you have with the person you love will deepen or deteriorate because they are clinging closely to something they know that could change everything but hasn't been expressed yet. However, that is not the only piece that is concealed. There's more. An additional level to this narrative. And the most surprising of all is this one. You see, it wasn't simply about you that the person you love spoke about. Additionally, they talked more about themselves than they meant to. They expressed their greatest dread. It's the dread of being completely seen by you, not the fear of losing you. The worry that you would leave them if you were aware of every weakness, every setback, and every secret aspect of their background. And they are immobilized by that fear. It prevents them from being completely truthful. They are unable to be completely present because of it. It prevents them from allowing you to enter. As a result, they push, pull away, use riddles in their speech, and say one thing while meaning something else. All of this is due to their fear of what you might see. But don't you already see? They don't realize how much you see. You can sense their suffering. The walls catch your attention. You can see the fear in their eyes. You're still here because of that. Since you are aware that there is more. You are aware that the true them remains hidden beneath the turmoil, just waiting to be set free. However, you are unable to set them free. They are the only ones who can do that. And they still haven't. In that chat, they were really close. Very near. They nearly collapsed at one point. Their voice broke. Their eyes grew brighter. They began to speak. Something that would have destroyed every wall. However, they ceased. They suppressed it. And the moment went by, but it will come again. It remains suspended in midair. Waiting to reappear at the appropriate time. And you won't believe how quickly that time is approaching. There's going to be another discussion. This time, with different people, the truth won't be suppressed because they've been thinking about the last person they spoke to. After giving it some thought, they have made the decision to act, not to harm anyone, but to provide clarity, end the silence, and at last allow the truth to come to light. And you'll need to be prepared when that occurs. Because everything you believe will be called into question by what you hear. It's about you, not about them. It will compel you to examine yourself, ask difficult questions, and confront the aspects of yourself that you have been avoiding. And that's what all of this is really about. To expose you to yourself, not to expose them. To assist you in realizing your own power, strength, and value. Since you've been waiting on someone else to respond. But the solutions you really require. You already have them within you. You weren't broken by the conversation. You were awakened by it. To serve as a reminder that you are whole. With or without their affection, with or without their words, and with or without their clarity. However, this does not imply that you should give up. Not quite yet. Since the last component is still absent. It's also the most crucial one. It's the one that will bring everything together. The one who will make the turmoil worthwhile. The one who will make you feel at ease. Not the tranquility that results from complete knowledge. But the type that results from having enough knowledge to take action, make decisions, and breathe at last. There will be peace soon. It's on its way already. And when it comes, you'll see that everything went according to plan. All of the pauses, silences, and unsaid words have brought you to this point, where you are stronger than you were before. Greater awareness, vitality, and preparedness for the future. However, the next portion is still happening, and you are still welcome to see it. One more truth, one more layer, one more step in the direction of the light. Are you prepared? The last item is nearly ready. However, not just yet. Remain near. Keep your eyes open. Remain with me. Because you're going to discover something that will liberate your heart. You will then be aware of it. At last, you'll know. First, though, here you are. Still searching, still hoping, still leaning in. That's lovely. That's power. By now, the majority of people would have turned away. However, you didn't. Something inside of you told you to stay. The ultimate reality is near. It's closer than before. It's also not what you anticipated. It has nothing to do with treachery. It has nothing to do with rejection. It has nothing to do with someone deciding to go. It has to do with something far more profound. Something you haven't been aware of. Out of protection, not out of cruelty. The one you adore. They had no intention of harming you. They were attempting to keep you safe from them. From the aspects of themselves they are embarrassed of, from their own brokenness. That's why the discussion took place. They couldn't bring themselves to tell you directly, which is why they wanted someone else to talk to. They were worried that you would perceive them the way they see themselves if they gave you the whole picture. And they were afraid of the concept. So they told someone else about their worries in a whisper. And that's another person. Everything was heard by them. The tears were visible to them. The shaking hands were visible to them. They witnessed the collapse of the person they look up to. And that's when they came to a profound realization that changed everything. They came to the conclusion that there is still love between you and this individual. It's only injured. Additionally, wounds can only heal if they are exposed to light. Only if they are acknowledged. Only if the individual with the wound ultimately chooses to come out of hiding. And that choice is being made at this very moment. Somewhere, at a peaceful moment, they are making a decision while you read these words. A decision to speak up. A decision to speak. A decision to give up running at last. However, because the dread persists, they still require a small amount of time. It takes time for it to go. However, you have been the cause of its weakening. They have noticed your love, patience, and willingness to stay when it would have been easier to leave, whether or not they have told you. They've sensed it. And it has been gradually taking down each of their fortifications. This is the reason this discussion is so potent. It was more than simply a way for them to vent.